A group of 5 people with diverse skills will outlast an isolated individual with vast supplies every single time.
Humans survived for millennia, not because individuals were tough, but because communities cooperated. The lone survivalist with a bunker full of supplies is a myth.
We must always be prepared for wars, for plagues, for destructions, for catastrophes, for defeat.
In this episode, we revisit the silence of March 2020. We ask a simple question: are we ready for the next crisis? We show how the modern world became weak because it was too complex. And we explain how trust between people collapsed. What essential skills, from growing food to purifying water, from fixing broken things with our hand to reading nature, stand between dependence and capability? We'll examine the new threats forming on the horizon: digital collapse, biological weapons, energy crises, climate migrations, and we'll explore how to build real resilience, not through stockpiling, but through skills, community, and the rediscovery of what our hands can do. Because the pandemic was the first warning, the next one will be quieter, but it won't be more forgiving. People say humans are special because of the brain. But the real story starts somewhere else, with the hand. Millions of years ago, the small and careful movements of our fingers pushed the brain to grow. Every time early humans held a stone or tried to shape a tool, their hands demanded more control. The hand became more complex, and the brain followed. Step by step, the hand helped build the human mind. Human culture grew from this. Making fire, crafting tools, drawing, writing, playing music. Our civilization came from what our hands could do. But in the modern world, this connection between hands and brain is breaking. We no longer use our hands with real skill. We just tap screens and click buttons. These actions are simple, shallow, and the cost is high. Our focus drops. Creativity fades, our thinking becomes slower. Because the brain still needs active, working hands, the same hands that once shaped the world. And now, the sad truth is this: the human hand once built the brain. But today, we might be using those same hands to let it fall.
The modern world has made us too comfortable. We've lived through decades of peace and prosperity, at least in the developed world, and we've forgotten something important. Human history is not steady progress. It does not move in a straight line. It rises, falls, breaks, and changes. It is shaped by conflict, disaster, and sudden collapse. We've become dangerously naive about human nature. Man produces evil as a bee produces honey, wrote William Golding. He understood, something we've chosen to forget. Beneath civilization's surface, darker sides remain. Not in everyone, not always, but in enough people. And in crisis, those dark sides come out. We must always be prepared for wars, for plagues, for destructions, for catastrophes, for defeats, for evil, not because we're pessimists, because we're realists, because history doesn't end, because the belief that it can't happen here, not now, has been proven wrong. There have been as many plagues as wars in history, yet always plagues and wars take people equally by surprise. Albert Camus wrote this in his book, The Plague, in 1947. But in 2020, the desperation was no longer quiet. March 2020. The world simply stopped. Remember the silence, not the peaceful kind, the strange kind, the kind that falls over empty motorways at midday, the kind that echoes through supermarket aisles. Strangers looked at each other with fear, not friendliness. London's streets fell silent. New York became a ghost town. Mumbai could suddenly breathe. It usually suffocates with mass of people, but we couldn't breathe. Not without masks, not without terror. Remember the images? Hospitals overwhelmed, doctors wearing bin bags. Proper equipment had run out. Refrigerated lorries parked outside hospitals. The morgues were full. In some countries, bodies left on the streets. No one knew what else to do with them. The pandemic wasn't just a tragedy. It was also theater of the absurd, written in real time. Do you remember the toilet paper crisis? It seems absurd now, almost comedic. But it revealed something profound about human psychology. When we feel loss of control, we grasp at anything we can control. Even something as mundane as toilet paper becomes a symbol of security, of preparation, of survival. We ignored tins of food, yet we panicked over hand sanitizer, but not over the weakness of our civilization. We are lonesome animals. We spend our lives trying to make sense of the cacophony of the universe, wrote John Steinbeck. In 2020, we learned what he meant, alone in our flats, alone with our thoughts, alone with the realization. The world we'd built, this magnificent, connected, globalized world, could vanish in 2 weeks. The silence wasn't peace. It was a warning shot. Did we hear it?
We built a world of infinite complexity, infinite interdependence, and in this century we learned what happens. Complex systems fail. The shocking thing about 2020 is this. It wasn't war. It wasn't an asteroid. It wasn't nuclear holocaust. It was a microscopic virus, and it brought the all-civilization to its knees. In 14 days, the food supply chain began to break. A marvel of modern logistics, destroyed. Supermarket shelves stood bare. Normally they're restocked like clockwork, not because there was no food. There was food, but the supply chain is a delicate dance. Just-in-time delivery. Remove one dancer. The entire performance collapses. Truck drivers fell ill, processing plants shut down, and borders closed. Suddenly, we faced a question it hadn't considered in decades. What if the food simply stops coming? In New York City, hospitals put up tents in car parks. Refrigerated lorries became temporary morgues. Healthcare workers wore the same mask for days, sometimes weeks. The wealthiest city in the wealthiest nation on earth couldn't provide basic protective equipment. These people were fighting on the front lines. In Britain, the National Health Service, the jewel in Britain's crown, nearly shattered. Not from lack of dedication, from lack of capacity. Intensive care units at 100% capacity, then 120%. Doctors made decisions no doctor should make. Who gets the ventilator, who doesn't, who lives, who dies. In Wuhan, China, where it all began, hospitals were overwhelmed. They built entirely new facilities in 10 days. 10 days, not because they were prepared, because they were desperate. Entire apartment blocks were welded shut to enforce quarantine. The desperation was absolute. In Italy, doctors in Bergamo faced impossible choices. The country's healthcare system was once the envy of Europe. It buckled under the weight. Elderly patients were denied intensive care, not because doctors were cruel. There simply weren't enough beds, not enough ventilators, not enough hands. Triage became a daily horror. In India, the second wave brought scenes from a nightmare. Oxygen supplies ran out. Families begged on social media for hospital beds. The beds didn't exist. Crematoriums ran 24 hours a day. Still, they couldn't keep pace. A nation of over 1 billion people, with some of the world's finest medical professionals, brought to its knees by a virus and poor infrastructure. The economy didn't just slow, it stopped. Airlines grounded, factories silent, millions furloughed overnight. The FTSE collapsed, the Dow collapsed, markets lost trillions in days. But here's what truly collapsed: our confidence, our certainty, the unspoken belief that the modern world was safe with all its technology and sophistication. We learned we were wrong. The virus didn't destroy our civilization. It revealed something. Our civilization had been running on hope, not foundations. On weakness, not strength. On optimism, not preparedness.
One of our most important human aspects disappeared in 2020, and it hasn't come back yet, not fully. Trust. Trust is civilization's invisible structure. We trust the food is safe. We trust the hospital will have space. We trust our neighbors aren't a threat. Take away trust. What remains? During the pandemic, we learned to fear each other. That person passing you on the pavement, potential danger. That colleague coughing in the office, danger. Your own grandmother, a risk you couldn't afford to take. Other people weren't companions anymore. They became threats. Human contact became Russian roulette. Communities broke along invisible lines. The masked versus the unmasked. The vaccinated versus the unvaccinated. The believers versus the doubters. Social media became a weapon of division, that great connector. Echo chambers hardened into bunkers. Trust in institutions wore away. Mixed messages from governments. Scientists disagreeing publicly. The World Health Organization changing guidance. Conspiracy theories grew in the soil of uncertainty. When official stories shift daily, unofficial stories seem equally believable. Neighbors reported neighbors for breaking lockdown rules. Families split over risk assessments. Friendships ended over disagreements about masks. The bonds that hold society together snapped. They were already weakened by decades of individualism. Sociologist Robert Putnam warned decades ago about the decline of social capital, the wearing away of community ties, civic engagement, and collective trust. He argued that this decline was critical because the greater the stock of social capital in a community, the more likely are its citizens to control their own destiny and to better the lot of their own children. The pandemic was the ultimate stress test, and we failed. But here's what's most troubling. That trust hasn't returned. Not really. We're more isolated now than before. More suspicious, more alone, more feared. In 2020, we had fear of each other. When the next crisis comes, and it will come, will we stand together? Or will we retreat further into our isolated corners of suspicion? We often worry about the great global crises that could end everything. We read about the major threats, a catastrophic cyber attack that shuts down the electricity grid and banks, the terrifying possibility of nuclear war between great powers, a sudden economic collapse that makes money worthless. or a new wave of epidemics that spreads faster than anything we saw with COVID. These huge, abstract threats feel distant. They are problems for governments and powerful people to solve, we think. But here's what we forget. Crises don't have to be global to destroy whole life. Local crises happen constantly. Somewhere, right now, someone's world is ending, while yours continues normally. Can you predict and analyze the possible local crises in your region? A major earthquake, tornado or a hurricane, water crisis or a flood, a civil war, a regional conflict. It seems impossible until it isn't. Look at Ukraine. In February 2022, Kyiv was a modern European capital. Cafes, universities, traffic jams, normal life. Within weeks, it looked like cities from World War II. Air raid sirens, bomb shelters, queues for bread and water. Families sleeping in underground stations. No one expected it. Or rather, some did. But most didn't believe it would actually happen. Not here, not now, not in the 21st century. Imagine you're living in Kyiv. Would you be prepared for that situation? For wartime conditions, for infrastructure collapse? Not over months, over days. The electricity going out, not coming back. The water stopping, the shops closing, not reopening. Now imagine, just for a moment. What happened there happened in your city, your street, your home. Are you truly prepared? Or consider the massive earthquakes. Indonesia, Japan, China, Turkey, recent earthquake disasters. 2 years ago in Turkey, almost 55,000 people died overnight. 55,000 people. Bodies in bags on roadsides. Morgues are overwhelmed. No water, no food. Theft and crime everywhere. Desperation overrides civility. Everyone thinking only about their own survival. The government trying, but unable to reach people quickly enough. You're on your own. Genuinely on your own. Are you ready for that situation? Are you physically prepared? With supplies? With skills? With strength? Are you mentally prepared for the horror, the grief, the constant stress? Is your family ready? Are those closest to you ready? If we're not even prepared for regional crises, the ones we can actually predict, plan for, and practice, how can we possibly be prepared for another major global crisis? The answer terrifies me.
I know of no more encouraging fact than the unquestionable ability of man to elevate his life by conscious endeavor. This is from Henry David Thoreau's wonderful book, Walden, or Life in the Woods. He believed in human potential, in capability, in the power of deliberate action. Let me tell you what the pandemic should have taught us. Not the official lessons, wash your hands, follow the science, the deeper ones, the uncomfortable ones. Nassim Taleb, the mathematician and philosopher, coined a term, anti-fragile, not resilient. Resilient merely withstands shock. Anti-fragile grows stronger from it. The pandemic revealed we've built a fragile world. The question is, can we build an anti-fragile one? The answer lies not in technology, but in something far older. Skills, community, self-reliance, the very things we've spent a century outsourcing. During the lockdowns, something unexpected happened. People began to bake, not because they needed to, supermarkets still sold bread, but because they wanted to. They wanted to create, to produce, to feel competent. Sourdough became a pandemic cliché, but it represented something profound. The rediscovery that your hands can make things, that you need not be merely a consumer, passively purchasing from an endless supply chain. Growing food isn't romantic peasantry. It's insurance. A tomato plant in a pot, herbs on a windowsill, a vegetable patch in a garden. These aren't hobbies. They're skills that matter when the supply chain fractures. Yes, these things grow slowly, painfully slowly by modern standards. A tomato takes months, not minutes. Basil doesn't arrive in 30 minutes like a takeaway. There's no next day delivery on potatoes. But here's what we forget. When the time comes to need them, truly need them, those will be slow times. The frantic pace of our current lives, the speed we take for granted, will become a memory. A strange, distant memory of a world that moved too fast to be sustainable. In crisis, time changes. Days stretch, weeks blur. The rhythm returns to something older, something human, the speed of seasons, not the speed of smartphones. And in that slower world, a garden isn't too slow. It's perfectly timed. It's synchronized with reality rather than with our artificial urgency. During the Second World War, Britain's Dig for Victory campaign turned parks and gardens into productive land. Why? Because when supply lines are cut, decorative roses don't feed people. Potatoes do, carrots do, cabbages do. In the 1990s, when the Soviet Union collapsed, Cuba lost its main source of oil, fertilizers, and imported food. This sudden cutoff led to severe food shortages. In a collective and organized response, the Cuban people quickly started using urban farming techniques. They converted parks, empty lots and gardens into thousands of small organic farms called organoponicos. This intensive community effort, relying on local labor instead of imported machinery and chemicals, allowed them to dramatically increase their own food supply in cities, successfully overcoming the risk of mass hunger through self-sufficiency. The modern world has made us dependent, utterly, completely dependent. We depend on supermarkets for food, on takeaways for meals, on delivery drivers for convenience. When that system hiccups, let alone collapses, we're helpless. But here's what's liberating. You don't need much to start. Seeds cost pence. Soil is literally dirt cheap. Knowledge is free on the internet, whilst it still works. Growing food isn't about achieving self-sufficiency tomorrow. It's about reducing dependency incrementally, about being 10% more capable this year than last. And when you harvest that first tomato you grew yourself, you've done something profound. You've proven to yourself that you can produce, not just consume, that you have agency, that you are not helpless.
The same transformation happens when you repair something broken with your own hands. That chair with the wobbly leg you've been meaning to replace, fix it instead. When you tighten that joint, sand that surface, restore function to something discarded. You've rejected the throwaway mentality that makes us dependent. You've proven that broken doesn't mean useless. Or when you create something new, knit a jumper, build a shelf, bake bread from flour, water, salt, and thyme. These aren't quaint activities from a simpler era. They're declarations of independence. Each thing you make with your hands is evidence, tangible, physical evidence, that you possess capability beyond your bank balance. That your worth isn't measured solely by what you can purchase, but by what you can do. In wildness is the preservation of the world, said Henry David Thoreau. He understood what we've forgotten. Nature isn't a luxury. It isn't just a weekend escape. It's fundamental to human survival and sanity. In every walk with nature, John Muir wrote, one receives far more than he seeks. During lockdown, deprived of our usual distractions, millions rediscovered this truth. Nature isn't just entertainment. It's education, it's pharmacy, it's resilience. Understanding nature means understanding seasons, understanding weather, understanding when to plant, when to harvest, when to prepare. Pre-industrial humans knew this instinctively. We've forgotten it means understanding which plants are edible, which medicinal, which poisonous. Our ancestors could navigate forests and fields like we navigate supermarket aisles. We've lost that literacy. It means understanding water, where to find it, how to purify it, why it matters more than almost anything else. In a crisis, humans survive 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. Yet most of us couldn't locate a clean water source if our lives depended on it. The pandemic trapped us indoors, but those who could access nature, a park, a garden, a forest, fared better mentally. Studies showed it. Lower stress, lower anxiety, better sleep. Nature isn't luxury, it's necessity. Richard Louv coined the term nature deficit disorder to describe the costs of modern alienation from the natural world. We're not meant to live in concrete boxes, staring at screens, breathing recycled air. We're meant to be outside, to feel sun and rain, to touch earth, to remember we're animals, not machines. Reconnecting with nature isn't about becoming a survivalist hermit. It's about remembering you're part of a larger system, that your well-being depends on ecological well-being, that when nature suffers, eventually, so do you.
The pandemic revealed a brutal truth. Comorbidities kill. Obesity, diabetes, heart disease, the chronic conditions plaguing the developed world, made COVID-19 deadlier. We externalized health to healthcare systems, to doctors, to pills. I'll deal with health problems when they arise, we thought. The pandemic showed that this strategy is catastrophic when healthcare systems are overwhelmed. Your health is your first line of defense, not your only line, but your first. Being physically fit, eating properly, sleeping adequately, these aren't vanities. They're tactics. Hippocrates, the father of medicine, said it millennia ago. Let food be your medicine and medicine be your food. We've replaced food with processed products, meals with snacks, nutrition with convenience. The results are devastating. Taking care of your health doesn't require a gym membership or expensive supplements. It requires prioritization, walking instead of driving every time, cooking instead of ordering, sleeping instead of scrolling, simple things, difficult things, essential things. But here's what most people don't consider. In the next pandemic, hospitals will be overwhelmed faster than last time. Why? Because healthcare systems haven't expanded. In many places, they've contracted. Beds have been cut. Staff haven't been retained, which means you need medical literacy you don't currently have. Advanced first aid isn't about treating a scraped knee. It's about managing a serious wound when there's no ambulance coming. It's about recognizing sepsis before it kills. It's about knowing how to splint a fracture, control arterial bleeding, recognize and treat shock. First aid certifications exist for a reason. They teach you to provide care when professional help is hours or days away. In a severe pandemic or systemic collapse, professional help might be weeks away, or maybe not coming at all. Hygiene and sanitation sound boring until you realize that in every major disaster, secondary diseases often kill more than the initial event. Cholera, dysentery, typhoid. These aren't medieval diseases, they're modern ones, held at bay by functional sanitation. When that fails, they return. Knowing how to implement field sanitation, proper waste disposal, water sterilization, preventing cross-contamination, saves lives. More lives historically than dramatic medical interventions. Basic pharmacology means understanding what's in your medicine cabinet and why. Understanding which over-the-counter medications treat which conditions. Understanding drug interactions. Understanding shelf life and proper storage. It means having a medically responsible supply of prescription medications if you depend on them. Not hoarding, not stockpiling irresponsibly, but having enough to survive a disruption. Because in 2020, people couldn't get prescriptions filled. Pharmacies ran out. Supplies were interrupted. The art of medicine consists of amusing the patient while nature cures the disease, Voltaire quipped. But when nature isn't curing the disease, you'd better know what to do.
Here's a thought experiment. Your electricity goes out. For 3 days, then a week, then a month. What breaks first? Your routine, your refrigerator, your sanity. We've become helpless, utterly helpless. Something breaks, we call someone. We pay someone. We replace it. But what happens when there's no one to call? When supply chains are disrupted and replacement parts aren't available? The repair economy needs to replace the consumer economy, not fully, but partially. Enough that you're not entirely dependent. Learning basic plumbing means you can fix a leak without waiting for a plumber who might not come. Learning basic electrical work means you can safely troubleshoot problems without burning your house down. Learning engine maintenance means your car, or generator, doesn't become useless metal the moment something goes wrong. These aren't specialist skills. They're basic competencies our grandparents had. Somewhere in the pursuit of efficiency and specialization, we lost them. Your hands are the most sophisticated tools you own. But if you've never trained them, if you've never fixed, built, or repaired anything, they're useless, worse than useless. They're a liability. Matthew Crawford wrote a book called Shop Class as Soulcraft, arguing that manual competence isn't just practical, it's existentially important. In the manual trades, the thing is what it is. It resists one's will in a way that is utterly unlike the compliant virtual reality of the computer screen. The satisfactions of fixing things are both intellectual and material, and they are available to anyone who has the skill and the interest. It gives you agency. It makes you anti-fragile. It means you're not helpless when things break, because things will break. The question is, can you fix them?
The internet is astonishingly fragile. Mobile networks are astonishingly fragile. In a crisis, they fail quickly. In 2020, they didn't fail, though they strained. But in a cyber attack, a major electromagnetic event, a prolonged infrastructure collapse, they will fail, which means you need communication methods that don't depend on them. Amateur radio, ham radio, has existed for over a century. It requires licensing, it requires equipment, but it works when nothing else does. After hurricanes, earthquakes, major disasters, ham radio operators are often the only communication link between affected areas and the outside world. FRS and GMRS radios are simpler, require no license in many countries, and provide local communication over several miles, not long distance, but enough to coordinate with family, neighbors, community members when mobile phones are dead. Communication is the foundation of civilization, wrote Isaac Asimov. He was right. When communication fails, coordination fails. When coordination fails, communities fall apart. Having a way to communicate outside conventional networks isn't paranoia, it's prudence.
The Great War of the 21st century will be fought over water. Although the oceans seem like an endless answer to our water problems, the truth is far more complex. Turning seawater into fresh water is still very expensive, and it uses a huge amount of energy, which often comes from fossil fuels and adds to climate change. The process also creates very salty waste that can harm sea life when it is released back into the ocean. Even with modern technology, these plants can only produce a small amount of water compared to what our cities, farms, and industries need. And for countries far from the coast, moving this water across long distances is slow and costly. Most of all, farming uses most of the world's fresh water, and using desalinated water for agriculture would be far too expensive. For all these reasons, the sea cannot be our simple solution. Fresh water, the water we can actually drink, is one of the most precious resources on our planet. Only a tiny part of all the water on Earth is clean and safe for us to use, and much of it is already under pressure from growing cities, farming, and a changing climate. This means we must treat every drop with care. We need to protect our rivers, lakes, and underground water and avoid wasting what we have. If we use it wisely, fresh water can support our communities for generations. But if we continue to waste it, the shortages we see today may become the crises of tomorrow. Around the world today, the struggle for fresh water is already creating new tensions. In some regions, rivers are drying, lakes are shrinking, and communities are competing for what remains. These pressures can lead to disputes between neighbors, and in some cases, they increase the risk of conflict and violence. Many countries are now facing such serious water shortages that they are forced to make difficult decisions, including plans to move major cities or even their capitals to places with more reliable water. It is a clear sign of how deeply water shapes our future, and how quickly a local problem can grow into a national challenge. You will die without water. Quickly, painfully. Yet most people have no plan for water in a crisis. None. They assume water comes from taps, always has, always will. What happens when it doesn't? In 2020 crisis, water continued flowing, mostly. But in future crises, particularly cyber attacks, infrastructure failures, or prolonged disasters, that might not be true. Can you identify 5 clean water sources within walking distance of your home? Can you safely collect rainwater? Do you know 3 different water purification methods? Boiling, chemical treatment, filtration. If the answer is no, you're not prepared. Water infrastructure is vulnerable, more vulnerable than people realize. It requires electricity to pump, chemicals to treat, staff to operate. Disrupt any of those, and the water stops. Having stored water is a start, but stored water runs out. What then? Knowledge, skills, the ability to find, collect, and purify water without modern infrastructure. This isn't paranoia. This is basic risk management.
Crisis preparedness isn't just what you can do, it's what you have, the buffer between normalcy and catastrophe. Most households have 3 days of food, 3 days. After that, they're dependent on functioning supply chains. 3 days is nothing. It's a long weekend, it's a minor disruption, it's nowhere near enough. Building a layered food storage system doesn't mean hoarding. It means having a rotation plan. Rice, pasta, tinned goods, dried beans, foods that store for months or years. Foods you actually eat, so they rotate through your normal consumption. The goal isn't surviving the apocalypse, it's surviving a disruption, a month-long supply chain breakdown, a prolonged strike, a severe weather event, another pandemic that closes supermarkets. But here's what people don't think about. Money itself is vulnerable. In 2020, bank runs nearly started. Governments printed trillions. Currency values fluctuated. Digital payment systems strained. In a severe crisis, digital currency becomes inaccessible. Bank systems fail. Cards don't work. What then? Physical cash has value in short-term disruptions. In longer ones, it becomes paper. Which is why historically, precious metals, gold, silver, have served as stores of value. They're not magic, they're just difficult to inflate away. And in truly severe disruptions, barter matters, not gold bars. Practical items, alcohol, cigarettes, even if you don't smoke, batteries, hygiene products, tools, things people need, things people trade. Nassim Taleb writes about barbell strategies, holding both very safe and very speculative assets, avoiding the mediocre middle. In preparedness terms, have regular savings for normal life, have practical supplies for disruptions, have preserved wealth for catastrophes. Energy resilience follows the same logic. You probably have electricity. For now. What if you don't? Solar panels and battery banks aren't science fiction. They're increasingly affordable. They provide energy independence, not unlimited energy, but enough to charge phones, power lights, run small medical devices. Generators are useful, but they require fuel, and fuel supplies run out. Renewable energy doesn't. Candles, oil lamps, torches with rechargeable batteries, basic lighting that doesn't depend on the grid. Sounds primitive, sounds unnecessary. Until the grid fails for a week. The point isn't living off-grid permanently. It's having options when the grid isn't available.
Here's what people miss about survival. It's not a solo sport. The lone survivalist with a bunker full of supplies is a myth, and a dangerous one. Humans survived for millennia not because individuals were tough, but because communities cooperated. In a crisis, your most valuable resource isn't your stockpile. It's your family, your neighbors, people around you, their skills, their goodwill, their willingness to cooperate. Do you know who lives on your street? Do you know what they do? Do you know who's a nurse, who's a mechanic, who knows how to garden? If not, you're unprepared. Building social capital, trust-based relationships, reciprocal arrangements, community ties, matters more than almost anything else. A group of 5 people with diverse skills will outlast an isolated individual with vast supplies every single time. Because supplies run out, skills don't, and communities pool both. But here's what's equally important: mental resilience. The Stoic philosophers, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, wrote extensively about maintaining composure in crisis. Not because they were cold, but because panic kills, stress kills, despair kills. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength, wrote Marcus Aurelius. In a prolonged crisis, your mental state determines your survival more than your supplies. The ability to remain calm, to think clearly, to make rational decisions under extreme stress, to maintain hope without delusion. This is trainable. Meditation, Stoic philosophy, cognitive behavioral techniques. These aren't luxuries, they're survival tools. And practical skills matter too. Can you navigate without GPS? Can you read a physical map? Can you use a compass? Can you orient yourself by sun and stars? These skills sound archaic. Until GPS satellites fail, until mobile networks are down, until you're genuinely lost. Our grandparents could do these things instinctively. We've forgotten. We need to remember. You may think all of this is unnecessary. You may believe that when the time comes, you can simply pay for what you need. That money will be enough. So let's talk about the fallacy of money and why this idea is wrong. The fallacy is simple. If I have money, I can ask others to do what I need, even if I cannot do it myself. This works in normal times, but in a crisis, it does not. In normal times, money is capability, money is security. You can't fix your car? Pay a mechanic. You can't grow food? Buy it. You can't treat a wound? Go to hospital. Money outsources competence. But in a crisis, a real crisis, not an inconvenience, money becomes a useless paper, sometimes literally. When supply chains collapse, there's nothing to buy. When professionals are overwhelmed, there's no one to hire. When systems fail, money can't summon them back. The pandemic offered a glimpse. People with wealth couldn't buy their way to safety. They couldn't buy healthcare when hospitals were full. They couldn't buy toilet paper when shelves were empty. Money provided comfort, yes, but not immunity, not survival. Imagine a more severe crisis, a prolonged one, infrastructure failing, energy scarce, supply chains broken. In that environment, what matters? Skills matter, physical capability matters, knowledge matters, community relationships matter. Being a content creator earning millions? Irrelevant. Being a CEO? Meaningless. Having a stock portfolio? Useless when markets are closed. What matters is what you can do with your hands, what you know, who trusts you, who will work with you. Crises are great equalizers. They reveal who has actual capability versus who has merely purchased the appearance of it. This isn't an argument against money. It's an argument against dependence, against assuming money will always solve problems, against neglecting basic competencies because you can afford to pay others. In a severe crisis, only communities with basic skills and good organization survive, not wealthy individuals, not powerful corporations, communities, groups of people who can produce food, fix infrastructure, care for sick, maintain order, and cooperate effectively. Your capital isn't your bank balance, it's your skills, your relationships, your ability to contribute. Build that capital, because when paper money fails, it's the only capital that matters.
The pandemic was a warning, but it wasn't the main event. Let me walk you through the nightmares that keep risk analysts awake. Digital collapse. In 2021, Texas experienced a taste of this. A cold snap caused the power grid to fail, millions without heat, water, electricity, in one of the richest states in one of the richest countries on Earth. For days, imagine a coordinated cyber attack that takes down electrical grids, not for hours, For weeks, months. No electricity means no refrigeration, no water pumping, no heating, no internet, no mobile phones, no banking systems. Modern civilization has a 3-day buffer before chaos. Maybe this isn't science fiction. Estonia was cyber-attacked in 2007. Their entire digital infrastructure nearly collapsed. Ukraine's entire power grid was hacked in 2015 and 2016. These were warning shots. The next one might not be. Now imagine that scenario, but stronger and longer and global. And don't forget biological threats, far worse than COVID-19. Engineered pathogens, lab leaks, antibiotic-resistant bacteria that make common infections lethal again. COVID-19 killed millions, but had a relatively low fatality rate, around 1 or 2%. The next pandemic will be swift, deadly, and unpredictable. Bill Gates said this before 2020. Imagine a pandemic with COVID's transmissibility, but Ebola's lethality. Possible? Yes. Likely? Increasingly. Energy collapse. The modern world runs on oil and gas. What happens when that stops? Not becomes expensive. Stops. A major Middle East conflict that closes supply routes. A cascade failure in energy infrastructure. A rapid, chaotic transition to renewables without adequate preparation. Everything stops. Transport, manufacturing, agriculture, everything. Climate migration, rising seas, failed harvests, uninhabitable regions, hundreds of millions of people moving, not orderly migration. Desperate survival-driven mass movement. Borders can't hold that back. Walls can't stop that. The resulting instability, conflict, and collapse of social order would make 2020 look like a rehearsal. Economic collapse. Global debt is at record levels. Financial systems are interconnected and fragile. A major bank failure, a sovereign debt crisis, a currency collapse. Any of these could trigger a cascade. In 2008 global financial crisis, we nearly fell over the edge. We pulled back, barely. Next time we might not. Natural disasters intensifying, not individual earthquakes or hurricanes, but compound disasters, multiple catastrophes overlapping, systems already strained, then hit again and again. No recovery time, no resilience, just accumulated damage until collapse. Journalist Douglas Rushkoff wrote, "We are living in a moment of cultural chaos and change that's only going to accelerate. The pace of change, technological, environmental, social, is outstripping our ability to adapt. Something will break. Probably multiple things, probably soon. Are we prepared? Are you prepared? Or are we sleepwalking into catastrophe, assuming someone else will fix it?"
Here's the good news. You're not helpless, you're not doomed, you're not powerless, but you need to stop pretending everything will be fine. Resilience isn't pessimism. It's realism. It's looking at the world clearly and saying, things might go wrong and I'll prepare for that possibility whilst hoping it doesn't happen. The solution isn't building a bunker and hiding. It's becoming capable, becoming connected, becoming anti-fragile. Start small, absurdly small. Grow one plant, learn one skill, meet one neighbor, build 1 week's food buffer. Then next month do it again and again. Incremental preparation, gradual capability building. No dramatic transformation required, just steady, persistent effort. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, wrote Lao Tzu. You don't need to become a survivalist overnight. You need to become 1% more prepared each month. Relearn nature, not only as entertainment, but as necessity. Understand seasons, understand water, understand food production, understand that you're part of an ecosystem, not separate from it. Relearn your hands. Fix something, build something, make something. Stop being purely a consumer, become a producer, even a tiny one. Relearn community, talk to neighbors, share skills, build trust, create reciprocal relationships. Because when things go wrong, your community will matter more than your supplies. Relearn mental discipline. Practice remaining calm under stress. Practice rational thought during panic. Practice hope without delusion. These are skills, not innate traits. They can be trained. The new era of resilience isn't about retreating from modernity. It's about not being entirely dependent on it. It's about having options when systems fail. It's about capability, not just consumption.
The pandemic was loud. It announced itself with sirens and death tolls and empty streets. We couldn't ignore it because it was unavoidable. The next crisis won't be so obvious. It will creep. It will compound. It will be subtle until suddenly it's catastrophic. A slow erosion of infrastructure, a gradual breakdown of supply chains, a quiet failure of institutions. By the time it's obvious, it will be too late to prepare. The hottest places in hell are reserved for those who, in times of great moral crisis, maintain their neutrality, Dante wrote. But there's something worse than neutrality in crisis. There's willful ignorance before it. We were warned about pandemics for decades. Experts pleaded, simulations were run, reports were written. We ignored them, not because we didn't know, because knowing was uncomfortable, because preparation seemed paranoid, because surely it wouldn't happen. It happened. And we're making the same mistake again. We know cyber infrastructure is vulnerable. We know financial systems are fragile. We know social cohesion is eroding. We are causing something that has never happened before in the history of the world. For about 150 years, we have been burning fossil fuels. Since the Industrial Revolution, we have filled the atmosphere with carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. The atmosphere is like a natural blanket that protects us. But now, we are pressing this blanket down with dangerous gases. The result is clear. Heat that should escape from the Earth can no longer pass through the atmosphere. So the planet becomes warmer and warmer. The polar ice melts, water sources shrink, and extreme weather events grow in both strength and number. Floods, hurricanes, droughts, and heat waves. All of them are becoming more common because of what we are doing. Individual preparation won't prevent catastrophe, but it will help you survive it. And survival matters, not just for you, for what comes after. Because civilization doesn't end in a blaze. It erodes, and it's rebuilt by those who maintain skills, knowledge, community, and hope. Fire tests gold, and hardship tests brave people. In every difficulty, we discover a new part of ourselves, one we did not know was there. And often, that part becomes our greatest strength, wrote Seneca. The pandemic tested some souls. The next crisis will test more. The question isn't whether crisis is coming. It is. Multiple crises, overlapping, compounding. The question is, will you be among those who survive, who rebuild, who carry forward? Or will you be among those who assumed someone else would solve it, right up until it was too late? The pandemic was the first warning, a relatively mild one in retrospect. Millions dead, yes. Economies disrupted, yes. But civilization survived. Systems held, mostly. The next warning won't be so gentle. It will be quieter, yes. More insidious, yes. But not more forgiving. Don't forget the silence of March 2020. That eerie, unsettling silence of a world that had stopped. It's coming back. Not next week. Not next month. But soon. Maybe sooner than you think. And this time, the silence might last longer. Be ready.